A woman filmed my disabled clients in secret while calling me a slob in front of a teenage girl I was training. When I asked her to stop, she laughed and said, You should be ashamed to even show your face in a gym." I stayed silent. That was 3 months ago. This morning, her husband was quietly escorted out of the health department in handcuffs. I was helping a teenage girl adjust the lat pull-down machine when a Karen dressed head to toe in designer workout gear interrupted us. "Excuse me, young lady," she said to the teen. "You need an actual trainer, not someone who clearly doesn't practice what they preach." I will admit, at 275 pounds, I didn't exactly look like an expert, but I'd started at over 500 and was damn proud of myself. I tried to ignore Karen at first. I encouraged the teenage girl to do the same and keep her focus on the exercise, but this seemed to infuriate the Karen. "This is exactly what's wrong with gyms today," she announced, very loudly this time. "They hire anyone. Just look at this slob. He's easily 100 pounds overweight. It's the blind leading the blind." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "I'm documenting this for my review." Other members were starting to stare and whisper. Some looked uncomfortable. Others started pointing fingers. Karen noticed the attention and seemed to feed off it. She walked over to the front desk where my newest employee, Yvette, was working. She demanded to speak to the owner immediately. Yvette had only been working there a week. She looked panicked and said she'd get a manager. "A manager won't do," Karen snapped. "I want the owner. I pay $25 a month for this membership. I deserve better than obese staff." She turned back to me and the teen, who was now borderline in tears. "You should be ashamed of yourself, giving advice to this fat girl when you can't even control your own weight." That's when I noticed something that changed everything. While she was ranting at Yvette, I saw her repeatedly checking her phone. She kept glancing toward the adaptive fitness area where we run programs for special needs adults. She'd positioned herself perfectly to record them in the background of her videos. Our Saturday morning water aerobics class for adults with disabilities was just starting. She was filming them while complaining about me. I walked over and asked her to stop recording in the gym. It was against policy. Of course, Karen exploded. She said I had no authority and threatened to have the place shut down for health violations. That's when she revealed she was married to the district health inspector. She'd already texted him about the unsanitary conditions of having those people in the pool. She actually used air quotes when she said those people. The special needs class instructor overheard and came over looking worried. This program had taken 2 years to establish. It was the only one in town. Many of the participants had nowhere else to go for adaptive fitness. The woman saw the instructor's concern and smiled. She said pools that allow contaminated populations need extra inspections and usually fail. I'd heard enough but stayed calm. I asked her to come to the office to discuss her concerns privately. She refused and got louder. She said everyone should know what kind of place this was. She started listing every overweight member she could see. She called us a threat to public health. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my wallet slowly. She smirked. She probably thought I was going to offer her a refund or free membership to shut her up. Instead, I took out a small laminated card and held it up. It was a before photo from 3 years ago. It showed me at 475 pounds next to my current gym owner license. She fell silent as she realized what she was looking at. "I kept that photo as a reminder," I said calmly. 3 years ago, I couldn't walk upstairs without stopping. I was diabetic. My doctor said I had maybe 5 years left. This gym saved my life. When I bought it last year, I made one promise. Everyone is welcome here regardless of size, ability, or journey. Karen's face went through several expressions as she processed this information, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. She said it was even worse that someone who let themselves go that badly was running a fitness facility. She said I was enabling unhealthy lifestyles. My gym was a danger to the community. But while she was ranting, Yvette had been making phone calls. Turns out one of our members in the adaptive class was a civil rights attorney who specialized in discrimination cases. Another was a journalist who'd been recording the entire interaction. And the teenage girl I'd been helping? She was the daughter of the state disability rights commissioner. Within minutes, the woman found herself surrounded by people who weren't just defending me. They were documenting every discriminatory word she'd said. Her husband, the health inspector, showed up just in time to see her being escorted out by security while threatening lawsuits. He looked mortified and apologized profusely. He said he had no idea what she was doing. He promised to make this right, but something about his smile as he walked out told me otherwise, and sadly, I was correct. The next morning, I arrived at the gym at 5 a.m., 2 hours before we opened. I needed time to prepare. Something about the health inspector's parting smile had lodged itself in my gut like a stone. I walked through each area methodically, checking for anything that could be cited. The locker rooms sparkled. The equipment gleamed. Every safety sign was properly posted, but I knew that wouldn't matter if they wanted to find problems. My maintenance manager, Robert, arrived early too. He'd worked at the gym for 15 years, long before I bought it. He found me inspecting the pool chemical logs for the 3rd time. Without a word, he handed me a coffee and started his own inspection routine. We both understood what was coming. By 7 a.m., my entire staff had arrived unbidden. Word had spread about yesterday's incident. Yvette was at the front desk organizing membership files. My head trainer, Catherine, was deep cleaning equipment that already shone. Even my part-time instructors had shown up on their day off. The solidarity warmed me, but the knot in my stomach only grew tighter. The health inspector arrived at 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes after we opened. He wore the same apologetic expression from yesterday, but his clipboard was thick with forms. Behind him trailed 2 additional inspectors I'd never seen before. My heart sank. A 3-person inspection team meant they were taking this seriously. He introduced his colleagues formally, explaining this was a routine, comprehensive inspection. Nothing to do with yesterday, he assured me with that same unsettling smile. Just unfortunate timing. They would need access to all areas, all documentation, and would be conducting staff interviews. I nodded and assigned Robert to accompany them. The inspection lasted 4 hours. They examined every inch of the facility with magnifying glasses. They tested water samples from fountains I didn't know we had. They measured the space between equipment with tape measures. They photographed everything. When they finally gathered in my office, their clipboards were full of notes. The lead inspector's smile had grown throughout the morning. Now it practically split his face as he detailed their findings. The list was extensive. Water temperature in the therapy pool was 2 degrees below optimal. A ceiling tile in the men's locker room showed signs of moisture. The gap between 2 treadmills was an inch less than recommended. None were serious violations, but together they painted a picture of negligence. He saved the worst for last. They'd found elevated bacteria levels in the pool used for adaptive aquatics. Not dangerous levels, he clarified quickly, but concerning given the vulnerable population. They would need to conduct daily testing for 2 weeks. During that time, the adaptive programs would need to be suspended for safety. His wife had been right to be concerned. I felt the blood drain from my face. Our adaptive programs served 43 adults with disabilities. For many, it was their only physical activity all week, their only social interaction. Some had been coming for years. The thought of telling them they couldn't use the pool made me sick. Catherine knocked and entered without waiting for permission. She placed a folder on my desk, her jaw set with determination. Inside were our pool testing records for the past year. Every single day showed bacteria levels well within safety standards. She'd also included reports from our monthly third-party testing service. All perfect. The inspector's smile faltered slightly as he reviewed them. He recovered quickly, explaining that their equipment was more sensitive than commercial tests. For the safety of our special populations, they couldn't take chances. The suspension would stand. However, if we wanted to expedite the process, we could hire their recommended testing service for daily monitoring. He slid a business card across my desk. The company name was unfamiliar, but something about it nagged at me. After they left, I sat in my office staring at that business card. My staff gathered around, faces grim. Yvette had already fielded 6 calls from adaptive program participants worried about the rumors. Robert had overheard the inspectors discussing their next visit, already scheduled for Monday. Catherine was researching the testing company and found it had only been incorporated 2 months ago. That evening, I stayed late reviewing our options. We could comply and hope they'd eventually leave us alone. We could fight and risk escalation, or we could find another way. As I locked up, I noticed a car in the parking lot. One of our adaptive program participants, a young man with Down syndrome named Bobby, was sitting with his mother. They'd been waiting to talk to me. Bobby's mother explained he'd been devastated when he heard about the pool closure. This program had changed his life. He'd lost 30 pounds, made friends, and gained confidence. She'd driven him here hoping I could explain when he could come back. Karen's husband showing up with that apologetic smile while his wife's getting escorted out is like watching someone pretend they didn't see their dog knock over the neighbor's trash can while actively holding the leash. The hope in Bobby's eyes as he asked about next week's class nearly broke me. I made a decision in that moment. I told them we were working on a solution and asked them to spread the word to other families. Don't give up on us. We wouldn't give up on them. Bobby hugged me before they left, a gesture that strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about my business anymore. That weekend, I made calls, lots of calls, to every contact I'd built over years in the fitness industry, to other gym owners who'd faced similar harassment, to advocacy groups for people with disabilities, to anyone who might have dealt with retaliatory inspections. A pattern emerged from their stories, and with it, a possible strategy. By Sunday night, I had a plan. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't without risk, but it was better than rolling over. My staff was on board. Several of our members had volunteered to help. Even some parents from the adaptive program had offered support. We would document everything, follow every rule to the letter, and make it impossible for them to shut us down without exposing their true motivations. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I stood in my gym at 5 a.m. again, but this time I wasn't alone. Robert was installing new security cameras in every corner. Catherine was creating detailed logs for every piece of equipment. Yvette was organizing a phone tree to alert members if needed. We were as ready as we could be. The inspection team arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, clipboards ready and smiles fixed. But something had changed over the weekend. Word had spread through our small community about what was happening. When the inspectors walked in, they found the gym fuller than usual for a Monday morning. Members who normally came in the evenings were there. Parents of adaptive program participants lined the lobby. Everyone was exercising, following rules, but their presence was a clear message of support. The lead inspector's smile tightened as he surveyed the crowd. He announced they would need to clear certain areas for testing. Members complied, but slowly, asking numerous questions about safety procedures and testing methods. One member, who happened to be a chemistry professor, engaged the inspectors in a lengthy discussion about bacteria testing methodology. Another member, a retired health inspector himself, asked to observe their procedures for educational purposes. By noon, the inspectors had only completed half their planned tests. Their frustration was evident as members continued to ask legitimate questions and document their own observations. When they finally reached the pool area, they found Catherine conducting staff training on water safety with 20 employees taking detailed notes, all perfectly legal and by the book, but decidedly inconvenient for their purposes. The day wore on with similar delays and complications. Every time they tried to rush through an area, a member or staff person had questions. Someone was always nearby with a camera phone, not filming them directly, but clearly recording the general area. The inspectors couldn't complain without appearing to have something to hide. As closing time approached, the lead inspector pulled me aside. His friendly mask had slipped completely. He suggested that this level of interference would only make things worse for us. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. I responded that we were simply being thorough about safety, just as he'd recommended. His jaw clenched as he promised they'd return tomorrow with additional resources. That evening, I met with my impromptu war council. The chemistry professor had noticed inconsistencies in their testing methods. The retired inspector confirmed their procedures were unusual. Catherine had found more information about the testing company, including a connection that made my stomach turn. The company's registered agent shared an address with the lead inspector's wife. We had a smoking GN, but what to do with it required careful consideration. One wrong move could bring the full weight of the health department down on us. But we also couldn't continue this dance indefinitely. Every day the adaptive program stayed closed was another day our members suffered. Bobby had called twice, asking when he could swim again. As we strategized late into the night, I thought about why I'd bought this gym in the first place. It wasn't about money or business success. It was about creating a space where everyone felt welcome, where transformation was possible regardless of starting point. That vision was under attack, and I wouldn't let it die. die without a fight. The battle was just beginning, and I knew it would get worse before it got better. But looking around at the determined faces of my staff and supporters, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. We were David facing Goliath, but sometimes David wins. Sometimes doing the right thing is enough. Sometimes communities come together in ways that surprise everyone, including those who would tear them apart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new inspections, new threats. But tonight, we prepared. Tonight, we planned. Tonight, we refused to let fear win. The gym that had saved my life was worth saving in return, and with the help of the incredible people around me, I was beginning to believe we might actually pull it off. The next inspection arrived before dawn. I discovered them in the parking lot at 4:30 a.m., using flashlights to examine our dumpsters. The lead inspector wore latex gloves as he photographed what appeared to be perfectly normal trash bags. His two colleagues measured the distance from the dumpsters to our back entrance with a measuring tape, shaking their heads and making notes. I approached them calmly, keys in hand. They informed me they were documenting potential vector control violations. The proximity of waste disposal to the facility entrance could attract pests. When I pointed out that our dumpsters were exactly where the previous health department had required them to be placed 5 years ago, they simply noted my comment and continued photographing. Inside, they produced a new list of concerns. The emergency exit signs needed to be 3 inches lower. The water fountain temperatures were now being measured at the spout rather than the reservoir. The mirrors in the yoga studio could cause disorientation and needed warning labels. Each violation was minor, almost absurd, but they documented everything with the thoroughness of a crime scene investigation. Catherine arrived at 5 a.m. to find them testing the friction coefficient of our rubber flooring. She watched silently as they used a specialized device to measure slip resistance in areas that had never seen a single accident in 15 years. When they moved to the weight room, she followed at a respectful distance, taking her own notes. By 6 a.m., Robert had arrived with our lawyer, a soft-spoken woman named Patricia, who specialized in small business advocacy. She observed the inspection without interfering, occasionally whispering observations to Robert. The inspectors grew visibly uncomfortable with her presence, but couldn't legally ask her to leave. The morning brought a parade of concerned members. Word had spread through social media about our situation. The chemistry professor arrived with his own testing kit, setting up a small station near the pool to conduct independent water quality tests. The retired health inspector brought his old code books, sitting in the lobby to compare current requirements with established standards. At 8 a.m., the adaptive program participants began arriving despite the pool closure. They gathered in our community room, which we'd hastily converted into an alternative activity space. Bobby was there with his mother, leading the group in chair exercises he'd learned from YouTube videos. The joy on their faces as they worked out together made my chest tight. The inspectors noticed the gathering and immediately investigated. They informed me that our community room wasn't licensed for group fitness activities. The adaptive program would need to cease immediately or face additional violations. I watched Bobby's face fall as I explained we'd have to stop the chair exercises. Patricia stepped forward then, producing a thick folder of documentation. She calmly explained that the community room was designated as a multi-purpose space in our original licensing. Group activities that didn't involve equipment were explicitly permitted. The lead inspector's face reddened as he reviewed the paperwork, but he had no choice but to allow the activities to continue. The pattern continued throughout the week. Each day brought new inspectors, new violations, and new attempts to shut down our programs. They tested the pH levels in our bathroom sinks. They measured the lumens of our lighting fixtures. They even brought in a sound meter to document that our motivational music exceeded recommended decibel levels during peak hours. Catherine discovered something interesting while researching the testing company they'd recommended. The business address led to a residential home owned by the lead inspector's brother-in-law. The company's only other client was a competing gym across town, one that notably didn't offer any adaptive programs. She documented everything carefully, building a paper trail. The financial pressure mounted quickly. Each inspection required staff time to monitor and document. We had to hire additional cleaning crews to address every minor citation immediately. The pool closure meant refunding adaptive program fees, even as we continued paying instructors to run alternative activities. My reserves dwindled as we fought to stay open. Members began organizing without my knowledge. Yvette showed me a social media group that had formed called Save Our Gym. It had over 500 members sharing their stories of transformation and community. They'd started a meal train for staff working extra hours. Some offered pro bono professional services. A local accountant volunteered to review our financial records. A marketing expert created free promotional materials highlighting our inclusive mission. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of our evening members, a quiet woman named Linda who'd been coming for years, approached me after her workout. She worked in the county clerk's office and had noticed something odd. The inspection reports being filed didn't match the citations we were receiving. Someone was altering documents between the field inspection and the official filing. Patricia's eyes lit up when she saw the evidence Linda had carefully photocopied. The discrepancies were subtle but significant. Minor violations were being upgraded to moderate ones. Recommended improvements became mandatory corrections. Timeframes for compliance were shortened. Someone in the health department was systematically amplifying every citation. We decided to conduct an experiment. For the next inspection, we would document everything in triplicate. Catherine positioned herself to video record all interactions from a legal distance. Robert would shadow the inspectors with his own clipboard. I would handle any violations immediately, in real time, before they could be inflated in the official report. The inspectors arrived to find us prepared. As they cited a paper towel dispenser for being an inch too high, Robert immediately lowered it. When they noted a small water spot on a mirror, Catherine cleaned it before they finished writing. Every violation was addressed instantly, documented with time-stamped photos, and signed off by both parties. The lead inspector grew increasingly frustrated as the day progressed. His usual tactics weren't working. He couldn't inflate violations that had been corrected before he left the building. He tried claiming our real-time corrections were evidence of a reactive rather than proactive approach to safety, but Patricia calmly noted that immediate response to concerns demonstrated exceptional commitment to standards. During lunch, I overheard a heated phone conversation between the lead inspector inspector and someone he repeatedly called honey. His wife was apparently upset about the lack of progress. He assured her that he would find something substantial by the end of the day. The conversation confirmed what we'd suspected all along. This was personal, not professional. That afternoon, they focused intensely on the pool area. They took dozens of water samples, tested every surface, and examined each piece of equipment. The chemistry professor shadowed them, taking identical samples for independent testing. The retired health inspector observed their methodology, occasionally shaking his head at their unconventional procedures. Around 3 p.m., they announced they'd found something significant. The pool filter system showed signs of biofilm buildup. This could harbor dangerous bacteria and required immediate replacement of the entire filtration system. The cost would be astronomical, well beyond what our small gym could afford. The lead inspector could barely contain his satisfaction as he delivered the news. Robert examined the filters himself. He'd maintained pools for 2 decades and knew biofilm when he saw it. These filters were clean. He asked to see the test they'd used to detect the buildup. The inspector reluctantly showed him a test strip that had turned pink, indicating positive results. Robert produced an identical test strip from his maintenance kit and tested the same filter. It remained white, negative for biofilm. The chemistry professor asked to examine both test strips. After a few minutes of study, he made a shocking discovery. The inspector's test strip had been pre-treated with a reactive agent. It would turn pink regardless of what it touched. He demonstrated by pressing a fresh strip from the inspector's kit against a sterile surface. It immediately turned pink. The room fell silent. The lead inspector's colleagues exchanged nervous glances. Patricia stepped forward, her voice steady and professional. She informed them that using fraudulent testing methods constituted official misconduct. She would be filing a formal complaint with the state health department and the district attorney's office. The lead inspector tried to blame the test manufacturer, claiming they must have received a defective batch, but his colleagues were already distancing themselves, packing up their equipment with hurried movements. One of them quietly approached me and whispered that they'd had concerns about the lead inspector's methods, but feared retaliation if they spoke up. Within an hour, they were gone. But we knew this wasn't over. The lead inspector's wife wouldn't give up easily. We'd won this battle, but the war would continue. Patricia advised us to maintain vigilance and continue documenting everything. The formal complaint would take time to process, and meanwhile, they could still make our lives difficult. That evening, the adaptive program participants returned for a celebration in the community room. Bobby had made a banner reading "Gym Family Forever" with help from his mother. The teenage girl I'd been training initially brought her father, the disability rights commissioner. He thanked me personally for protecting the adaptive programs and hinted that his office was very interested in our documentation. As the week progressed, the inspections became more desperate. They arrived at odd hours, hoping to catch us off guard. They brought in specialists to examine our HVAC system, our electrical panels, our plumbing fixtures. Each inspection found fewer violations as our defensive strategies improved. The community support grew stronger with each attempted harassment. Catherine compiled a comprehensive timeline showing the pattern of targeting. Every inspection focused disproportionately on areas used by the adaptive programs. The pool received 10 times more scrutiny than the general fitness areas. The community room was inspected daily, while the weight room went largely ignored. The bias was becoming impossible to deny. The financial strain reached a critical point. Despite community support, we were hemorrhaging money on defensive measures. I spent sleepless nights reviewing budgets, trying to find ways to keep the doors open. Some staff offered to work reduced hours. Members organized fundraisers, but I knew we couldn't sustain this indefinitely. Then Patricia discovered something that changed everything. While reviewing public records, she found that the lead inspector's wife had previously filed similar complaints against 3 other gyms in neighboring counties. Each gym had offered adaptive programs. Each had faced escalating inspections until they discontinued those programs. There was a clear pattern of discrimination. We weren't just fighting for our gym anymore. We were standing against systematic discrimination that had already destroyed other inclusive fitness programs. The weight of that responsibility was overwhelming, but it also strengthened our resolve. We couldn't let them win. Too much was at stake. The chemistry professor's independent testing revealed more fraudulent results. Water samples that tested positive for bacteria in the field showed 0 contamination when analyzed in a certified lab. Equipment swabs that supposedly showed dangerous residues were actually cleaner than hospital standards. Every piece of evidence pointed to deliberate falsification. Members with connections in local government began making inquiries. A city councilwoman who worked out at our gym started asking questions about the unusual frequency of inspections. A county supervisor whose nephew attended our adaptive programs requested copies of all inspection reports. The scrutiny from elected officials made the health department nervous. The lead inspector made one final desperate attempt. He arrived with a team of 6 inspectors and announced a comprehensive structural evaluation. They would examine every beam, joint, and support in the building. Any deficiency would require immediate closure for public safety. It was their nuclear option, but we were ready. Robert had anticipated this move and hired a licensed structural engineer to conduct our own evaluation the previous week. When the inspection team arrived, we presented them with a stamped engineering report certifying the building's complete structural integrity. The lead inspector's frustration was palpable as he realized we'd outmaneuvered him again. As they conducted their inspection anyway, something unexpected happened. One of the younger inspectors pulled me aside. She'd been troubled by what she'd witnessed over the past weeks. The testing methods were unlike anything she'd learned in training. The focus on adaptive programs made her uncomfortable. She was willing to provide a statement about the irregular procedures if it would help. Her courage inspired others. By the end of the day, 3 more inspectors had privately expressed concerns about the lead inspector's methods. They'd been following orders, afraid for their jobs, but the blatant discrimination had become too much to ignore. Patricia carefully documented their statements, building an ironclad case. The structural inspection found nothing, as expected, but the lead inspector wasn't finished. As he prepared to leave, he made a chilling threat. He had connections throughout the state health system. Even if we survived his inspections, he would ensure that every gym we ever opened, every business we ever ran, would face similar scrutiny. We would never escape his reach. Catherine caught the entire threat on video. The lead inspector hadn't noticed her phone positioned strategically on a nearby nearby shelf. His words, dripping with personal vendetta and discriminatory intent, were captured in crystal-clear audio. It was the final piece of evidence we needed. That night, we held an emergency meeting with our legal team and key supporters. Linda from the county clerk's office just became the MVP without even breaking a sweat. Forget personal trainers, we need more filing cabinet detectives. The evidence was overwhelming, but we had to be strategic about how to use it. Patricia recommended filing formal complaints with multiple agencies simultaneously. The State Health Department, the Civil Rights Commission, the District Attorney's Office, and the Federal Department of Justice all needed to see what we'd documented. The community rallied around us with renewed energy. The adaptive program participants and their families wrote letters describing how the gym had changed their lives. Members submitted testimonials about our inclusive environment. Local businesses expressed support for our mission. The groundswell of support was humbling and empowering. As we prepared our formal complaints, I reflected on how far we'd come. What started as one woman's prejudice had exposed a system of discrimination affecting vulnerable populations across multiple counties. We'd uncovered fraudulent testing, document tampering, and abuse of power. But more importantly, we'd shown that a community united could stand against injustice. The battle wasn't over. Filing the complaints would likely trigger retaliation. The lead inspector and his wife wouldn't go down without a fight. There would be legal challenges, potential lawsuits, and continued harassment. But we were no longer fighting alone. We had evidence, allies, and the moral high ground. Looking around at the faces of my staff, members, and supporters, I felt a profound sense of purpose. This gym had saved my life by giving me a place to transform myself. Now it was time to save the gym and ensure it remained a place where everyone, regardless of ability or appearance, could find acceptance and support. The war against discrimination would continue, but we'd proven something important. When good people stand together, when communities refuse to be divided, when documentation meets determination, even the most entrenched systems of prejudice can be challenged. We'd found our voice, gathered our evidence, and prepared for the final battle. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we filed our complaints and faced the consequences. But tonight, we stood united in our mission. The gym that welcomed everyone would not be defeated by those who would exclude. The adaptive programs would continue. The inclusive vision would endure. And somewhere in a government office, a lead inspector was about to learn that abuse of power has consequences. The next morning arrived with an ominous email from the health department. They were scheduling a comprehensive facility review for the following week, requiring all documentation from the past 5 years. The timing wasn't coincidental. Patricia had filed our complaints yesterday afternoon. I gathered my staff early. The chemistry professor had analyzed 30 water samples overnight, finding zero contamination in any of them. His report ran 20 pages, complete with methodology that would withstand any scrutiny. Catherine had compiled video evidence from 12 different inspections, showing the lead inspector's increasingly erratic behavior. Robert had statements from 4 current health department employees willing to testify about irregular procedures. The adaptive program participants organized their own response. Bobby's mother coordinated with other families to document how the program had improved their children's lives. Medical records showed weight loss, improved mobility, increased social engagement. One participant's doctor wrote that the program had literally saved his patient from diabetes complications. These weren't just fitness classes, they were lifelines. 3 days before the comprehensive review, something unexpected happened. A woman I'd never seen before walked into my office during lunch. She introduced herself as the lead inspector's former colleague from another county. She'd heard about our situation through professional channels. Her story made my blood run cold. 5 years ago, she'd witnessed him target a small gym that offered programs for veterans with PTSD. The pattern was identical. Escalating inspections, fraudulent test results, threats to shut down inclusive programs. That gym had eventually closed. The owner lost everything. She'd kept copies of the documentation but had been too afraid to come forward alone. Now she wasn't alone anymore. Patricia's eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. This established a pattern spanning multiple jurisdictions. Combined with our evidence, it painted a picture of systematic discrimination that couldn't be ignored. We spent the afternoon organizing everything into a comprehensive package for the State Health Department's Oversight Division. The lead inspector made one last attempt to intimidate us before the review. He showed up unannounced with his wife, claiming they needed to inspect our member files for privacy compliance. Catherine calmly informed them that member records required a warrant or formal inspection notice. His wife's face turned purple as she demanded immediate access. Other members in the lobby pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. When they finally left, threatening legal action for non-compliance, I noticed something. The retired health inspector who'd been helping us was on his phone, speaking urgently. Within an hour, 3 senior health department officials arrived at our gym. They weren't there to inspect, they were there to apologize. The Oversight Division had received our complaint package that morning. Combined with the former colleague's evidence and complaints from the other inspectors on his team, they'd launched an immediate investigation. The lead inspector had been suspended pending review. His testing company was under investigation for fraud. The pattern of discrimination was undeniable. One official pulled me aside privately. They'd discovered the lead inspector had financial interests in the competing gym that didn't offer adaptive programs. His wife had been promised a management position there once our programs were shut down. The corruption ran deeper than simple prejudice. There was money involved. The comprehensive review was canceled. Instead, the health department sent a team to officially certify our facility. They tested everything using proper procedures. Every single result came back exemplary. Our pool water was cleaner than state standards required. Our safety protocols exceeded recommendations. The adaptive programs were models of inclusive fitness programming. Patricia filed civil rights complaints with federal authorities. The evidence was overwhelming. Documented discrimination against people with disabilities, fraudulent government inspection processes, conspiracy to deny public accommodations. The lead inspector and his wife faced serious legal consequences beyond just losing his job. Our community's response was overwhelming. The story spread through local social networks, bringing new members who wanted to support inclusive fitness. The adaptive program expanded from 1 session to 3. Bobby became an unofficial ambassador, greeting new participants and showing them exercises he'd mastered. His confidence transformation inspired others. The financial bleeding stopped. Members who'd suspended their memberships during the harassment returned. New sponsors stepped forward to support the adaptive programs. A local foundation that promoted disability inclusion offered a grant to expand our accessibility features. The gym that almost died became stronger than ever. Catherine discovered something beautiful while reviewing our membership data. During the worst of the harassment, not a single member had canceled specifically because of the inspections. They'd seen through the discrimination. They'd stood by us. The community we'd built was real, and it was unshakable. The teenage girl I'd been training when this all started became a regular. Her father, the Disability Rights Commissioner, used our case as an example in state training programs. She told me that watching me stand up to discrimination had taught her more than any exercise routine could. She wanted to become a trainer herself, specializing in adaptive fitness. 3 months later, the lead inspector's trial began. Patricia kept me updated, but I didn't attend. I was too busy running programs, training staff, and welcoming new members. The gym had moved forward. We'd won not through retaliation, but through persistence, documentation, and community support. The other gyms he'd targeted reached out. 2 had closed, but 1 was considering reopening. We shared our documentation, our strategies, our hard-won knowledge. If we could help even one more inclusive space survive, the fight would have been worth it. Robert installed a plaque in our lobby. It didn't mention the harassment or the victory. It simply read, "Every body is welcome here. Every journey is valid. Every person matters." Underneath, in smaller text, "Dedicated to those who stand up for inclusion." It was enough. The adaptive programs flourished. We added wheelchair basketball, seated yoga, and sensory-friendly swimming hours. Each program attracted participants who'd been waiting for a place where they belonged. Their joy made every difficult moment worthwhile. The lead inspector was convicted of official misconduct and fraud. He lost his pension and faced significant fines. His wife was charged with conspiracy. The competing gym distanced itself from them, claiming ignorance. Their reputations were destroyed by their own hatred, but I took no satisfaction in their downfall. My focus remained on building something positive. Every new member who felt welcome, every participant who achieved a fitness goal, every family that found community, that was the real victory. We'd protected something precious. The chemistry professor became a volunteer advisor, helping us maintain impeccable testing standards. The retired health inspector joined our board, ensuring we always exceeded requirements. Patricia continued representing us pro bono, though we rarely needed her services anymore. The threat had passed. Bobby achieved his goal of swimming a full lap unassisted. The entire gym watched as he pushed himself across the pool, his mother crying happy tears. When he reached the wall, the cheering could probably be heard 3 blocks away. He raised his fists in triumph, and in that moment, everything we'd fought for was validated. My own journey continued too. The stress of the harassment had actually motivated me to intensify my workouts. I'd lost another 15 pounds, reaching 260, not because anyone demanded it, but because I wanted to be strong enough to protect what mattered. The gym had saved me, and I'd saved it in return. The ripple effects spread beyond our walls. Other gyms in neighboring counties started adaptive programs, inspired by our success. The state health department revised their inspection procedures, adding oversight to prevent discrimination. Change happened slowly, but it happened. A year later, I stood in the same spot where Karen had confronted me. The lat pull-down machine had a new user, a young woman with cerebral palsy working with our adaptive fitness specialist. Her determination reminded me why we'd fought so hard. This was never just about business. The teenage girl, now a certified trainer, worked with new members. She developed a specialty in helping people who felt intimidated by traditional gyms. Her empathy came from experience. She knew what it felt like to be judged, and she made sure no one in our gym ever felt that way. Some nights, I stayed late just watching the community we'd built. Former strangers had become friends. People who'd been isolated found connection. Bodies that had been seen as problems became sources of strength and pride. It was beautiful. The gym's mission statement never changed. Everyone is welcome here. But now those words carried weight. We'd been tested and proved their truth. When prejudice tried to divide us, we'd stood together. When discrimination threatened our most vulnerable members, we'd protected them. When hatred came disguised as authority, we'd exposed it. Looking back, Karen's cruelty had unleashed something powerful, a community's determination to protect inclusion. Her husband's corruption had revealed the strength of people united against injustice. They'd tried to tear us down, but only made us stronger. The adaptive pool sessions resumed with triple the participation. The sound of laughter and splashing filled the space that almost been silenced. Bobby led warm-ups with infectious enthusiasm. Families found support and understanding. Lives continued to be transformed. I kept my before photo in my wallet, but now it represented more than personal transformation. It reminded me that everyone deserves the chance to become their best self. That judgment and prejudice have no place in spaces dedicated to health. That sometimes the heaviest weights we lift are the ones others place on our shoulders. The gym thrived, not because we'd won a battle, but because we'd stayed true to our values. Every day, people walked through our doors seeking acceptance and finding it. Every day, we proved that fitness isn't about perfection. It's about progress, community, and the courage to keep showing up. That's the real victory. Not the legal consequences or the vindication, but the simple daily act of maintaining a space where everyone belongs, where a 275-pound gym owner can inspire others, where adaptive programs change lives, where community triumphs over discrimination. This story showed how standing up for what's right can change so many lives. Thanks for reading this amazing story with me.